I have this case study of a glyphosate exposure in a farmer's family that I live by myself. And a few years ago, I was monitoring the exposure to a pesticide in a farmer's family during the spray of this pesticide. And I was a bit struck because when I was with this farmer and he was washing his tractor and the cube to spray the pesticide, it was near a school. And you can see on this picture that there is a tractor, so the farmer was washing his equipment full of pesticide, and the school is just here. You can see it's near a church, and so there was a lot of children passing around and they were exposed to this pesticide, and it was completely uncontrolled and the farmer didn't care. So shows that there's a lot of progress to do. What I forgot to say is that pesticides also are present in food, and we now have evidence that avoiding them by eating organic food can also be healthier and more nutritious. These studies are also published in really good high-level journal, and you can keep them to have bullets if you want to talk about that. And it shows that the consumption of highly contaminated food by pesticide is associated to a wide variety of congenital disorder or disease. We don't have all the data for that and we need more experiments, but at least we have a solid background of evidence. Now I will go into more details into the assessment of pesticides, so you can see that the regulatory assessment is not sufficient to protect us from the effect of pesticide. And we know that because from historical cases, we know that a number of pesticides were approved before, and then they were linked to birth defects or cancer, even if they were considered as safe by the regulatory assessment first. I will take the example of glyphosate. This is the most widely used herbicide in the world. This is a map in the US. I would be happy to have the same for Europe, but we don't have the same monitoring. And you can see that over years, from the 90s to these days, human exposures to glyphosate are rising, and people now, everybody has glyphosate residue in urine, whether if it's in the US or in Europe, and it can really ask the reliability of the health risk assessment. I should say that I take the example of glyphosate, but it's because it's the most documented and it's now a symbol of modern agriculture, but it's not the most toxic pesticide. Some are by far more toxic than glyphosate, and they can also be used as glyphosate replacement. So we shouldn't replace a problem by another, but find new alternatives. I should say first that glyphosate is not a single molecule. It's always commercialized as mixtures of one active principle, which is glyphosate, and which is mixed with various adjuvants in commercial formulation. So farmers are never using one molecule, or people in cities when they are spraying in parks, they are never using one molecule, but a commercial mixture composed of different toxic compounds. And we can notice that these commercial mixtures, they are never assessed for health effects. Only glyphosate is tested in long term, and all the other components of these formulations, they are considered as inert, and they are considered like if they were water. They are not included in the risk assessment. And we can even say that it's not coherent with the recommendation of the scientific committees of the European Union, because when you have a complex mixture like that, it's recommended to study it as itself, not to take only one component. To know if these adjuvants present in glyphosate-based herbicide could be toxic or not. We have studied a commercial formulation by itself and not only the active principle as it is done in the regulatory assessment. And we can say that the study of the commercial formulation itself, it's more relevant because this is what people are exposed to. We are not exposed to glyphosate alone. So we have performed this 2-year study of the toxicity of a glyphosate-based formulation in rats. And we have shown that in the male, there was signs of liver and kidney toxic effect. The female developed mammary tumors, and these effects were detected at level far below the regulatory assessment of glyphosate, far below the acceptable daily intake. We have confirmed this finding recently. I have to say that because this study is really controversial and we have been attacked a lot by industries and by lobbyist groups. But now we have confirmed this data at a molecular level, and we know that Roundup is provoking toxic effect on liver at environmental level, and we know how it provokes these defects. It's not the only study. When you look at the literature, there's dozens of studies showing that commercial formulations are more toxic than active principles. We have even shown that by looking at these effects in vitro on human cells, these adjuvants considered as inert, they were 1,000 times more toxic than glyphosate alone. I will not spend too much time on that because you have the details and I want to let time for discussion, but we have also confirmed that at another level on different pesticides, insecticides, fungicides. And these adjuvants, they can be found in the environment and they are among the most toxic molecules. They can be associated to birth defects in population of farmers exposed to pesticides. They can even be toxic for bees and they can be responsible of colony collapse disorders. So at least you can see that in the regulatory assessment, when we are talking about authorization of pesticide, it's only of an active principle. It's not the commercial formulation. We choose one ingredient, and this is the one which is studied.